Hello, and welcome. My name is Michelle, and I am your emotional resilience coach. I am also a recovering codependent, which means that I come from a abusive background. I had narcissistic slash codependent parents. I learned codependency to survive. I learned it by mirroring other people's behavior. And today I want to chat to you about the fact that as codependents, who we are and how we are and how we show up in life is really a direct result of the trauma we've been through. These patterns of behavior that we have may not serve us, but they certainly allowed us to survive. So if there is things in your past and ways and areas and places in which you have shown up, in which you have guilt around, perhaps you enabled somebody. Maybe you allowed somebody to get away with something longer than they should have. Maybe you weren't able to be there for people in a capacity in which they needed you to be there. I can give you a quick example from my own life. When I was about 11 or 12, my parents were divorced, and my biological father said to me that from now on, going forward, if I were to see him on every alternate weekend, I needed to contact him. The onus was upon me. The ball was in my court. And I needed to contact him and let him know that I wanted to be collected, that I wanted to spend the weekend with him. The problem was that, number one, it was going to upset my mother tremendously. Like, the fact that I went there every second weekend was already a thorn in my mother's side. And it really put strains on the relationships and it really made things really uncomfortable with my stepfather. And the other thing was, I wasn't actually allowed to use the phone. The phone was a business phone for my stepfather, and if there were any calls done or made, he used to get really, really upset because a client could be trying to get through. So you were never allowed to use his phone. And so he put me in a really uncomfortable, really awkward position. Now, this is not perhaps a big deal, but this is just a small example of a scenario in which I was a kid, I was about 11 years old, and it was really awkward for me. And so I didn't phone him because I didn't want to rattle the cage. I didn't want to upset my mom. I didn't want the tears. I didn't want the drama. I didn't want the manipulation. I certainly didn't want to rock my stepfather's boat because he would just go into these rages and he would be cruel and he'd be narcissistic. And so for a long time, we never saw each other and we never spoke to each other. And in that time, interestingly, he never reached out or contacted me either. He never phoned me for birthdays or Christmases. He never touched base, but I carried the guilt. And this is what I've been talking about in a previous video where I said, you've got to let go of guilt that isn't yours. Now, I was people pleasing and I was walking on eggshells and I was trying to make sure that everything was okay in the home in which I lived 90% of the time. And that means that I had to let go the every second weekend home. And the result of that was that I felt really bad. I felt really guilty and I was really upset with myself for not doing it. And there were times and periods in my life where I had some regrets and I thought, well, could there have been a different way that I could have done it, should have done it, would have done it? You know, these horrible loops that we fall into, these terrible things that we say to ourselves and do to ourselves. And the truth is that, one, I was a kid. I was 11 years old. I think it was the year I was turning 12. And the second thing is that what always comes up for us is that we need to understand that we do and say, and perhaps unfortunately disappoint some people along the way, not because we're trying to be vicious or because we're trying to be malicious or because we're trying to get back at anybody or because we feel like we need to punish anybody for any particular reason, but it happens because we are trying to survive. We're trying to survive the trauma and the drama that we are living through and that we are trying to navigate. And so just give yourself some love, give yourself some compassion, and whatever it is that you are feeling guilt about, whatever it is that you are carrying, whatever it is that you wish could have somehow been different, and in retrospect, maybe you could have had a little bit of power over it, maybe not. It's really difficult because so often when you are a child, you truly are a victim because you are in a helpless situation. And in that helpless situation, you have little to no choices. I didn't have very many choices in that situation. In retrospect, maybe I could have gone to a friend's house, but even that was few and far between. I wasn't allowed at that age out. When I got older, yes, and maybe then, and I did. When I was about 15, I phoned home. I phoned my father, and he answered the phone, and I said, "Hi, Dad," and he went really, really quiet. There was this dead silence on the other side of the phone, and then he said, "My name is," and he gave me his first name, and then he put the phone down, and I was mortified. I was absolutely horrified that this had happened. He had felt rejected by me, and so he was now acting out. But again, I was still a child. At 15, you are still a child. And so I realized that because I hadn't phoned him, because I hadn't organized anything, because I hadn't done my part to see it, I carried for years and years and years this guilt about it. But the onus was not upon me. The onus was upon him. And it was not my guilt to carry. And I needed to survive. And that's what I did. And so I don't know if you have a particular story, if you have something in your past, in your history, where you think back and you have a little bit of pain and you cringe over, just let it go. Take a deep breath in and just tell yourself, I did and I said, and what happened was so that I could survive. And just keep showing up with yourself from a place of compassion, because that's what you need right now. You need a lot of love, you need a lot of compassion, and you need a lot of self-forgiveness. I hope that this helps. Please do let me know in the comments below. Come over to Instagram and say hi to me there. Have a great day.